Cerasani, Kindle writer. I'm going to ad-lib for a second before I say what I prepared. Just yesterday at the services, seeing the former players especially walk in was just, there was one in particular person that I'm not going to say his name, but some people in the room would know exactly who he is, who's on the state championship team and he's got a condition that's pretty serious and he's probably not going to be with us too much longer. And his parents looked at me and said, you know what, he wanted to come here tonight. And some people in this room know exactly who I'm talking about. And there's not a bigger testament I could think of for a coach or a teacher than a kid that's basically on his deathbed that's not a kid anymore, he's probably 35 years old, that wanted to do that. Meant quite a bit to me. All right, enough ad-libbing. The record for the season could be 2-7 or 7-2, and it wouldn't have any bearing on how proud my dad was of that team. He has 4 younger sisters. He loved them. He loved my mom. He loved his parents. He loved his nieces and nephews. He loved his friends. He thought of himself as Mr. Schomburg. I remember 20 years ago, and since, he'd pop into Easy Street Pub. Me and my brother used to hang out there. And I'd meet up every once. It wasn't his thing to go to places like that, but he'd come meet up with us every once in a while. And he loved it because people would buy him a beer and say, "Hey, Coach, how you been? What's up, Coach? Hey, how's it going?" He lived for that. He loved that. He would drive to the 7-Eleven for coffee on the opposite side of town every morning instead of the one right by his house because he liked chatting with the people that worked there and the other customers that went there became his buddies. Those guys are in this room right now.
Wow.
My brother would get mad at me if I ever bought my dad a good bottle of scotch for Christmas. He'd call it a waste. My dad preferred House of Stewart scotch. It comes in a plastic bottle and is as cheap as it comes. My dad loved Arlington Racetrack. My dad liked Vegas. My dad took us on vacations when we were little kids that made us think we were rich. My dad was good with numbers. My dad would go out of his way for people. My dad loved having special occasions at the Wellington. My dad loved the song Leaving on a Jet Plane. Not too long ago, I was at a karaoke bar with him and Barbara, and he got in front of the crowd and sang it. Now, mind you, we're in River North, downtown Chicago. It's a Saturday night. Okay. My dad and Barbara were the oldest people in there. Okay. No, I was probably the second oldest after that. Okay. It's a Saturday night in River North. All right. Kiss me and smile for just singing it. The whole bar's singing with him, cheering. 70 years old. Okay. This is 2 summers ago. Can't make this up.
That's a good story.
The last couple of years, it was nice. Then he and Barbara found each other. I was happy for them. His grandkids meant a lot to him. Sydney, Samantha, Jacob, Anastasia. The 4 of you are important, and important to Grandpa's legacy. Do not forget that. It has nothing to do with sports. It is about doing the right thing and making proper choices in life. You know you will make Grandpa proud as you get older. We know you will. There's comfort in knowing my dad is reunited with my mom in heaven. Family will always come first to my dad, period. Make no mistake about it. 100%, without a doubt, that was the first thing my dad taught me. The number one thing my dad taught me. My dad was a proud person. He was proud of his family, he was proud of his profession, he was proud of his football teams, he was proud of his wife probably more than anything. He was proud to live in Schaumburg and be a part of the Schaumburg-Saxon community. He was so proud that I could say I only saw my dad cry 3 times in my life. When my grandpa died, it was the first time, and the third time was when my mom died a few years ago. The time in between was when he dropped me off at college when I was 18. I have no doubt that these weren't the only 3 times he cried in the 41 years I knew him, but they were the only 3 times that I saw. The obvious things I could say about my dad to an audience like this are, well, they're probably too obvious. I mean, if you were in the if you were on the National Honor Society and happened to also be good at football, you could count on my dad using you in just about every example of what a Schaumburg football player to do. This is Schaumburg football. But if you didn't play football, and you were a kid he saw getting picked out in the hallways, or maybe you had a special need, or just were a guy that maybe didn't have the right things going on for him socially, my dad may have grabbed a couple of the varsity captains and said, hey, look out for this kid. Hey, let him eat lunch with you guys tomorrow. Perhaps my dad's true magic might be when he sees that kid that is probably more on the popular side socially, a kid that in the halls had quite a bit going for him, but a kid that wasn't making the best decisions in life, or maybe came from a family background where he wasn't being held accountable. That kid, the borderline kid, the kid that was fighting all the time, the kid that maybe got caught shoplifting, that's where my dad would truly shine. He gave kids like that some hope. He showed them that there is more to this world than this moment right now. He was successful, if he was successful in getting them to come out for the football team, then their lives would often change. I received many messages this past week that sang this tune and credit my dad for where they are at in their lives today. Some are in this room right now, and I won't embarrass them, but you all should know that stories like that have meant the world to my brother and me. Now, guidance like this doesn't come from a guy that spent his life sitting in a library in high school and college. Guidance like this comes from a guy who's been around the block that chose one lane over another one. My dad walked that line in his younger years, and we would hear stories from my mom just how close life could have went in a different direction for my dad. I'd hear stories, and I remember as a little kid picturing my dad as a greaser getting into fights all the time. Now, that was definitely a young boy's imagination. You know, I grew up on The Outsiders and The Warriors and all those movies. It's definitely my imagination, but I found out from my dad's cousins and my mom and everyone else there's definitely an element of truth to this. He chose that he's going to get a degree and teach and do what he loves and coach football versus other options and paths he saw some of his friends taking. The other lane required less time, less effort, and less money, but that lane wasn't as attractive to him in the long run. My dad prided himself as an adult in showing the right lane to his students that needed to see it. I believe that is the legacy that is fitting for my dad. I can say with 100% certainty that I would not be anywhere close to where I'm at in life without my dad's guidance. In fact, it was when I would mess up or do something borderline myself, which, you know, that my mom would whisper to me, "Oh my God, you are just like your father was." My dad would never admit it, but my mom would tell me. Would I have been able to figure it out myself and get on the right path and make the right choices? You know, I'd like to think so, but who knows? The fact of the matter is, I didn't need to, because I had my dad making sure that this was the case.
Hi, I'm Tom Cerasani. I know eulogies aren't supposed to be more than 5 to 7 minutes, but if you knew my dad, and he said, you know, I'm not going to talk long, you better buckle in. My dad came from simple beginnings. It's already been said. His father, Armando, was a carpenter. His mom, Rita, worked in a factory. His 4 sisters, who he loved, Lucy, Pam, Diana, Donna, used to steal quarters from his quarter jar.
Nickels.
They all lived in
It was Nichols.
and he knew it.
And he knew I did.
They all lived in a house on Road Street in River Grove. Be many Sunday dinners at that house. On special occasions, my grandma Rita's specialty was homemade raviolis. My dad would have ravioli eating contests, and he would usually win. They were a close family, and they would shape his life. My dad always put family first. You've heard that a lot today, but he did. One of the things that he said to Johnny and I, and I'll never forget it, you're going to have a lot of friends in your life. Some will come and go, but your family will always be your family. Growing up in River Grove and ultimately going to East Lyden High School was another monumental factor in my father's life. My dad played football and ran track there. He'd eventually meet my mom there. My dad was an East Lyden guy. As kids, we heard about how great East Lyden was. Heard about the stories of the fights between the East Lyden guys and the Elmwood Park guys. I heard about the brotherhood that all the football players had that played for Coach Lease. His connection to East Lyden helped him get the job at Schaumburg. And after I became the head football coach at Lyden in 2005, I asked my dad to come and coach with me. He had just retired from Schaumburg, and I was concerned, he was kind of older. And I said, Dad, are you comfortable, that you're going to fit in? And he kind of looked at me like, the look my dad gets when he's annoyed. Yeah. And he literally, we're at the kitchen table, he pulls down his shirt and he says, I got an eagle on my chest. I'm a Lyden guy. And by the way, I've been coaching football longer than you've been alive, so don't worry about it. You might think that football was the biggest passion in his life, but it wasn't. It was my mom. The best thing that ever happened to him was meeting my mom, Joan. They met at a baseball game when my dad was home from college and started dating. Things got serious quickly. They were married in 1971. They were young when they got married. They liked to go out and party. They loved to go out dancing. My dad always proclaimed that he was a great dancer. And you didn't have to ask him. He would tell you. He would also say he was a great singer. I remember my parents working on their disco moves in the front room before they went out on Saturday nights. Dance fever. Besides dancing, another staple in our house for my parents was cocktail hour. Before dinner, my dad would make the infamous Scotch Manhattan, or 2 or 3, and my mom would have a martini on the rocks. Yeah. Johnny and I were relegated to the basement so they could talk about their day. And then sometimes dinner didn't get served on time, a little late. But I think it's one of the reasons they had such a strong relationship. My parents also went through some hard times together. As most of you know, my mom had many illnesses to deal with, and my dad was her support. He never left her side through any of the countless doctor visits or procedures. He was dedicated to help her getting better. He was also always searching for different treatments and ways to help my mom. He would always ask the doctors, what do we do now? What's next? He'd never give up on her. And I think this sums up how my dad lived his life. He would set goals and fiercely pursue them. He wanted the best for his family and his friends and all his players. He'd never be satisfied with an answer he didn't like. He thrived in crisis situations because he always loved to figure out ways to overcome an obstacle. I think this is what also made my dad a great coach. Before my dad retired, he had taught and coached at Schaumburg and Palatine for 34 years. He was an assistant first, and then finished as the head coach. On Sundays during the football season, you could find him sitting there on his notepad, trying to out-scheme the opponent. Even if the team was overmatched on paper, he was always looking for a way to win. He had many great assistant coaches, and they became part of our family too. When my brother and I posted on Facebook that my father had died, we had hundreds of messages from former players, coaches, just people that knew him. It didn't matter if you were the best player on the team or the worst. My dad's message was always about being the best person you could be on and off the field. And to get those messages that he had helped shape their lives from so many people was overwhelming. My dad was tough on Johnny and I. He was tough on his players. Sometimes he was tough on his family and friends. In fact, I've been sitting around here all week crying. I've been waiting to get a phone call telling me to toughen up. But in reality, my dad had a big heart. He was the guy that would always say he hated the dogs we had, but he would cry the most when they died. He enjoyed the simple things. You've heard about the coffee. You've heard about the track. He loved going to the track on a sunny day. Loved going to Lifetime. For a retired guy, he was always very busy. After my mom died, my dad was a wreck. And for a while, we were really concerned about him. But then he found Barbara, and he had someone in his life to love again. He was back to his old self, and I know these past few years he was very happy with the life they had. She became part of the family, and we're all very grateful for the time she was able to spend with my father. My dad gave my brother and I the example of how to be good fathers. He loved all his grandchildren very much, but I don't think he worried about them because he already knew that Johnny and I could handle our families, and he was proud of what we'd become. Johnny and I always knew that our dad had our back in a pinch, which is probably why he kept a couple of grand in cash on hand in case one of us needed to get bailed out. He might not want to watch the grandkids on a Saturday night, but we always knew we could count on him when it was important. So now we'll do what he would have wanted, and we'll carry on the values he ingrained in us. Life will go on, but it won't ever be the same without him. After every football season, when it was over, whether it was a winning year or a losing year, my dad always left the team with this: if you were happy to be there, then it was a success. And Dad, when I look around at the people here today, and the people who have been happy to be involved in your life, you have led the definition of a successful life. We love you. We will all miss you. All right.
All right. So the next final paragraph here. Help him out here. By the way, there was a paragraph that he totally took out that he knew he wouldn't get through. But we're all going to go to Chandler's after the priest is going to finish up here. We're all going to go to Chandler's afterward to the Schaumburg Golf Club. Really, just knowing my dad, he wanted it to be a party, and if everyone could come here, if you can, please come. And it's in the banquet room at Chandler's, so everybody's welcome. Don't feel like it's just for close family and friends. Everybody's definitely welcome to that. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.